A new season of Britcar kicks off at the Rockingham Motor Speedway with an impressive grid of GTs, sports cars and touring cars. The organisers have worked closely with teams to develop regulations, as well as cultivating a competitive but friendly atmosphere. Britcar's rebirth looks set to continue, as our reporter Kiri Blore has been finding out.
It's an exciting 2018. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, just the interest that we've had over the winter has just been phenomenal. I just can't wait for these grids to grow. The numbers will just increase and the championship itself will just be back where it should be. So really pleased.
And some great circuits to continue through the season. Which one are you most looking forward to?
I love, personally as a driver, Alton Park, but our next round is Silverstone Grand Prix. I think that one will be our best for the season. And always the night race, Brands Hatch at the end of the year. Phenomenal track.
One driver well placed to judge the continued development of the championship is 2012 champion Martin Byford.
As Britcar has kind of changed ownership a couple of years ago, things kind of had to start again, and here we are with kind of blossoming grids again. 26 cars I think this weekend, so it's kind of that natural progression really. We've got some really fast cars up in the GT field, we've got TCR cars like this fighting with the GT4 cars, and so yeah, things just gently move on year on year.
Okay, so how are you finding Rockingham?
Love Rockingham, a fantastic circuit, great for viewing. You get up in the high grandstands here, you can see the whole circuit. It's one of the few in the country that you can see almost the whole lap from one vantage point, which is really good for the spectators. From driving point of view, turn one's always exciting. It's always nip and tuck. Is it flat? And yeah, the outside wall being solid concrete is always a little bit intimidating. But it's a low grip surface. It's always a bit of a challenge, especially in the rain. I really like it. I really enjoy it.
Last year, MJC Furlonger won the Endurance Championship with drivers Whitgamsky and Ross Wiley. The team doesn't return to defend its title, but Wiley is back, having joined forces with 2014 and 15 champion David Mason at FF Course.
I'm really excited. It's been a long winter. It was obviously nice to finish the championship on a high last year, but new challenges this year, and yeah, very much looking forward to it. Testing's been going well. First time working with David, and yeah, so far so good. Just can't really wait to get started. The sun's out, and yeah, no better place to start the season.
Darren Lewis and Tommy Knight were overall runners-up in 2017 and also took the Class 3 title in their Team Hard Ginetta. But that's another team with a new look for the season.
Okay, Darren, in for another season, but with a different co-driver this time.
Yeah, Tommy couldn't do it this year, so we've got Adam Hatfield racing with us. He stepped in a couple of times last year for Simon Rudd and stuff, and he's quite a quick little peddler, so should all be good.
And there's a new challenge for Barry McMahon, who steps up from his Alfa Romeo into GT4.
Last year we really enjoyed the Britcar, managed to get the Alfa out on a number of races. We won a few of the Class 5 results, but this year I've been tempted into the beautiful Aston Martin GT4 in the homologated class in Class 3. So yeah, it's a fantastic car, lots of power, a little bit heavier than the Alfa, but ultimately very exciting.
But plenty of difference as well.
There is, yeah. Obviously, I've been driving front-wheel drive cars for the last 10 years. This is rear-wheel drive. It's got things like traction control and ABS brakes, things that I'm not really used to. So a little bit of learning to do, not just this weekend, but probably for the next couple.
One of the youngest pairings on the grid is the Tockwith Motorsports duo of Ed Moore and Marmaduke Hall, who came close to winning last year's sprint class title.
Obviously, we had a good season last year, so yeah, we were aiming high this round, really, weren't we? But yeah, we've had a few engine problems, so we're just sort of seeing how it goes. We've got engine problems again at the minute, so just seeing what the mechanics can sort, really.
Okay, and what do you make of Rockingham so far?
It's a nice track. It's fast. We didn't get much dry running yesterday, but I like it as a track, and I think it'll be interesting racing here because it's quite a short track. And I think definitely into that first corner, the start of the race will be lots of overtaking and stuff. It'll be interesting.
The cars headed out into the sunshine for the first qualifying session of the year. A colourful grid featured a host of new drivers and teams, including fast-rising talent Christy Duran, who only started racing 6 years ago after winning the Scottish Sun's Rookie Racer competition. And at the other end of the experience spectrum, British touring car race winner Adam Morgan, teaming up with ex-BTCC racer Stuart Lyons to make his Britcar debut in the Maximum Motorsport Seat. Pole position by over a second went to Ross Wiley.
We had new tyres on, fresh tyres, and Ross went out first of all because he's the quicker driver, and he got pole position. He drove brilliantly, and backed it up and enjoyed a good run. So we look forward to the race.
Okay, fantastic. Who's going to go out first then?
That's a golden question, but yeah, they just answered it. I'm going to start the race. Hopefully build a little bit of a gap, and then hand it over to David, and hopefully we can bring it to the flag.
Also lining up on the front row for race 1, Richard Neary in the Team ABBA Mercedes AMG.
P2 what we're aiming for. Ross Wiley's in the GT3 Ferrari, and we thought Ross would be quicker than I am. So we are now, I think we did 5 laps, P2, see what the race brings, you know.
Okay, talk us going into turn 1. It's quite tight going into the corner, isn't it?
Turn 1, once you manage to get through it once, flat, it's easy. It's just quite daunting the first time you try and get your car through it. But turn 1's flat. I'm flat. I'm flat from the R on the Rockingham all the way to the 100-metre board, all the way through.
Fastest in Class 3 and punching above their weight to record the 3rd fastest overall time were Chris Papageorgiou and Jade Kruger in the Black Mamba Racing Ginetta.
Class 3 is very tight. What do you make of the battles going to happen this weekend?
I think this class could be anyone's, to be honest, because with the pit stops especially, you know, if you don't do them as you should, you lose a lot of time, so it's going to be really, really tight this year.
You showed some great pace last year. You sort of got that pace straight back again.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we were quick last year, and I think this year returning, I think I've not gone any quicker, but Chris has definitely made big strides since last season. So, I mean, going forward, we're definitely going to be, well, not even going forward already. In quali we showed it, we got good pace. So I think there'll be some trouble towards the end of the season between the other car and the team for who's going to be fastest, you know. So, yeah, it should be a good season.
The sister car of Andy Dimitru and former Formula Ford star Luke Williams were just 2/10 slower in 4th place, ahead of the fastest Class 2 car, as the Moss Motorsport BMW of Mike Moss and Tom Howard ended the session in 5th. Next up, and again only 2/10 slower, was John Seal in the FF Course Ferrari 488. With 7th place going to the Team Hard Ginetta of Simon Rudd and Tom Barley, 3rd in last year's Endurance Championship.
We had a plan to not run a lot of laps to keep our tyres for the races, so we're playing the long game. I think from the testing pace, we thought we'd be around P3, which is where we finished up, but hopefully we can bring that back during the races with our pace and our consistency.
How did you find Rockingham, Tom, so far?
Oh, I love it around here. I always have. It's always been a good track for me, and so far so good this weekend. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. It's great.
It was a troubled qualifying for Track Focused as their KTM Crossbow stopped out on track. And when Team Hard told their drivers to blow the doors off the competition, this wasn't quite what they had in mind.
Adam was going down the main straight and the passenger door blew off. So I think when I was doing my stint, we was 8 miles an hour slower on the straight than anybody else. So it wasn't worth carrying on, to be honest, so we just pulled in a party. But hopefully it should all come good in the race. We're normally better in the race than qualifying.
The BRM Motorsport Seat of Martin Byford and Ashley Woodman claimed Class 4 pole in an impressive 9th place overall, while Class 5 was headed by debutant Tim Docker in the Maximum Motorsport run VW Sirocco. So here's confirmation of how the top 10 lined up on the grid for the 50-minute sprint. The FF Course Ferrari of Mason and Wiley on pole, with the Team ABBA Mercedes of Richard Neary alongside. A pair of Class 3 Black Mamba Racing Ginettas sharing row 2. Then the Moss Motorsport BMW and John Seale's Ferrari on row 3. So it was the scarlet red Ferrari of Ross Wiley that led the rolling start into turn 1, with Richard Neary slotting into 2nd and the BMW of Mike Moss getting the jump on both Black Mamba Ginettas to shoot from 5th to 3rd. His joy was short-lived though, as both Ginettas proved to be pretty handy on the brakes into the Dean hairpin and duly recovered their positions. Right behind was the number 88 Team Hard Ginetta of Ben Wallace and Graham Roberts, which had rocketed from 11th on the grid up to 6th place. And then it was 3 abreast into Yentwood, this brave move from Simon Rudd in the Team Hard Ginetta as he squeezed inside John Seale's Ferrari and Adam Morgan's Seat, enough to put him up to 8th. On the approach to the Tarzan hairpin, the number 6 Ginetta of Chris Papageorgiou and Jade Kruger was overtaken by Luke Williams in the sister car in a change for 3rd place. In the next group, the order remained the same, although Adam Morgan was tenaciously snapping at the heels of Simon Rudd through the twisty sections of the track. At the end of lap 1, Wiley had established a lead of 1.1 seconds. A great spectacle as the cars thundered through this section of the banked high-speed tri-oval before turning off onto the International Sports Car Circuit, built within the massive infield complex at Rockingham. And that was where the battle for 8th place was about to intensify, as Adam Morgan went on the attack in the Seat and managed to outbrake Simon Rudd going into the Dean hairpin. On the exit to the corner, Rudd tried to get on the gas early to out-accelerate the Seat, but instead got sideways and laid down a trail of rubber. Meanwhile, Barry McMahon had opted to take his mandatory stop very early in the race, and sadly there was an early exit of a different nature for Peter Challis as his Aeropack International Porsche expired. Approaching mid-distance, Wiley had built up a 20-second lead over Richard Neary's Mercedes, but would that be enough of a cushion for gentleman driver David Mason to defend? Further back, the two Black Mamba Ginettas were still running closely in the fight for third place and the Class 3 lead. As the pit stops started to come thick and fast, John Seale had been busy making his way back through the order. The Class 1 Ferrari recovering to 6th and now chasing down Mike Moss's Class 2 BMW. Moss was just about able to keep him at bay on the run into the chicane and tried to get a good exit back onto the oval. The back end of the Beamer moving around as he buried the throttle. But with the long high-speed section to come and, let's face it, a Ferrari on his tail, it was a fruitless task. Seale promptly sweeping past the former production class champion on the run into turn 1. Adam Morgan was now clear in 7th place, and with the Ginetta of Wallace and Roberts ahead of them, that left Rudd and Lewis to squabble over 9th place overall and 4th in Class 3. One of the key features of Britcar is that completely different types of car can be raced against one another at close quarters, and that was certainly the case just a few seconds back, as the track-focused KTM Crossbow of Mike McCullum enjoyed a prolonged battle with Martin Byford's Seat for 11th place. The number 88 Ginetta of Wallace and Roberts exited the pits following a driver change and a strong opening stint that had put them up to 3rd in Class 3. Another couple of cars running closely, albeit a lap apart, with the Reflex Racing Audi A4 of father and son Robert and Alex Day, and the Whitebridge Motorsport Aston of Barry McMahon, who is now recovering back up the order following his alternative strategy of taking that early stop. The Audi he was chasing being the ex-BTCC machine raced by Rob Austin and affectionately known as Sherman. Race 1 was about to enter a critical phase as Richard Neary exited the pits, having made his mandatory stop with 18 minutes of the race remaining. Before the pit stop phase, the FF Course Ferrari of Ross Wiley and David Mason had built up a 23-second lead. Mason had taken over the wheel several laps earlier and was now in full flow, but it was becoming apparent that any kind of lead for the Ferrari pair was no longer a given. And indeed, it was the Mercedes that emerged first from the Dean hairpin. The Ferrari wasn't far behind, but behind it was. And we now had a new race leader. The number 22 Ginetta of Luke Williams and Andy Dimitru had retained 3rd place overall and was now around 6 seconds clear of the sister car of Chris Papageorgiou and Jade Kruger. The Black Mamba team on course for a 1-2 finish in Class 3. Tockworth Motorsport Ginetta of Matt Greenwood and Sarah Moore had now moved into the lead of Class 4, leaving the Seats of Ashley Woodman and Stuart Lyons, who had taken over from Martin Byford and Adam Morgan respectively, to squabble over 2nd place in class. They ran nose to tail into the final chicane, and then ex-BTCC racer and team boss Stuart Lyons was able to nose ahead. Having dropped out of the top 6 during the pit stop phase, the Moss Motorsport BMW, now piloted by Tom Howard, was on a mission to climb back up the order. On the exit to Tarzan, he promptly swept past the track-focused KTM to pick up 9th place. He cemented that position on the way into the chicane and then snaked his way through the left-right-left sequence leading back onto the oval banking. With a good exit, Howard was then straight onto the tail of the Rob Wallace Graham Roberts Ginetta, and it wasn't long before he gained back another position, 10th to 8th in just a few corners. The other Moss Motorsport BMW was also involved in the thick of the action, an intense fight for 11th place between the M3 of solo driver John Watt, the best placed Class 4 car in the sprint category, and the Class 3 Aston Martin of Barry McMahon. Into the closing laps, and Tom Howard had gained 2 more places to get the number 18 BMW back up to 6th place. Demoted to 7th, but now on for a Class 3 podium, was the number 24 Team Hard Ginetta, now driven by Tom Barley. Back up front, and Richard Neary had been busy growing his overall race lead in his Mercedes AMG GT3. He was now over a minute clear of David Mason's Ferrari 458. There was one other Mercedes AMG out on track, the GT4 spec version, run by Fox Motorsport and driven by relative newcomer Mark Murfitt, and now the rapid Michael Broadhurst. The Mercedes running just outside the top 10 and travelling quickly enough to unlap itself from the number 6 Black Mamba Ginetta that was in 5th place, having dropped back behind John Seale's Ferrari. And so the first race victory of the season went to the ABBA Racing entry of Richard Neary, who took the checkered flag 1 minute and 18 seconds ahead of the FF Course Ferrari of early race leaders Ross Wiley and David Mason. Meanwhile, late race drama pitched the track-focused KTM into the gravel and out of a top 10 finish. Here's the results with 3 different marks represented on the podium. John Seal takes 4th place in his Ferrari from Papageorgiou and Kruger, with Howard and Moss 6th overall and winning Class 2. Class 4 was won by Greenwood and Moore in 12th, and Tim Docker claimed Class 5 in 19th.
I was trailing about 20 seconds into the pit stop, but I think they had a problem with the Ferrari in the pit stop, so when we came out we were in the lead. It was just a question of holding station then, really, waiting for the race to finish.
We'll put a new back end in the car. We had a lot of problems this weekend, just getting that right. We've still got a lot more to come, but I think a really good result for the first meeting of the year.
The car can be improved massively. The boys done a brilliant job from where we first started a couple of years ago to what it is now. It's literally amazing. Every weekend we're going to be getting stronger and stronger, so we should be up there challenging the bigger boys as well.
The Black Mamba team, supported by Ultimate Motorsport, did a great job all weekend. Bit on the back foot after testing on Thursday, but from there we've just progressed, and yeah, 1-2 in class, so we can't complain.
Coming into the weekend as my first race as a senior, I could have never expected to get a win, but obviously we did.
We didn't think we'd be able to take it to the TCR cars because they were quite quick in practice yesterday. So we went out there to finish the first weekend. So to come away with a win is way more than we could have imagined.
I've raced here before a couple of times in the VW Cup, so I know the circuit reasonably well. Completely different scenario, obviously. VW Cup's a 20-minute race. 50 minutes an awful lot longer. Different tyres, not as sticky. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's good.
Second in Class 4 was Stuart Lyons and British touring car star Adam Morgan.
Okay, Adam, what do you make of your Britcar debut?
I've really enjoyed it, to be honest. It's a nice championship. There's lots of varied cars here. The racing's been quite close. It's my first time out in a TCR car as well, which I've enjoyed driving. Race 1 went okay. We qualified, I think, about in the top 10, and then we had a bit of a drama in the pit lane with some tyres, but no, it's okay. Second in class, but hopefully we can do a bit better in the second race.
With the starting order for the 2-hour endurance race based on race 1 results, it was Richard Neary who started from pole and showed everyone a clean pair of heels into turn 1, with Ross Wiley second and the number 22 Black Mamba Ginetta of Luke Williams holding station in third. But it didn't take long for the Ferrari to catch the Mercedes, and Wiley began to try to unsettle the race leader. Having missed race 1 due to their engine woes, Edmore and Marmaduke Hall were also forced to sit this one out. A huge disappointment for the championship hopefuls. Good news though for Christy Duran, who did make it out this time after electrical issues had sidelined her in race 1. Duran's Slide Sports engineered VW would be trying to prevent Tim Docker from taking a second Class 5 win. John Seal's Ferrari ran 5th, behind Neary, Wiley and the 2 Black Mamba Ginettas, but hanging onto his tail was Simon Rudd in the number 24 Team Hard Ginetta. He'd been promoted to 6th after Mike Moss's BMW had run wide onto the grass during the opening lap. Just outside the top 10, McMahon's Aston was closely followed by the 2 battling TCR Seats of Martin Byford and Adam Morgan, with the latter getting a better exit from the chicane to move into the Class 4 lead at the end of lap 2. Having lost the overall lead to the FF Course Ferrari, Richard Neary was then handed a drive-through penalty for a jumped start. By the time he exited the long Rockingham pit lane, he was down to 4th place and over 40 seconds adrift of Ross Wiley. And 2 early visits to the pits, the second of which was unscheduled, put McMahon out of contention for a class win. That would leave stablemate Chris Murphy to carry the torch for Whitebridge Motorsport. Having charged from the back of the field, Mike McCullum and Martin Byford resumed their race 1 battle, McCullum pulling off this move to take 11th place. Also locking horns was the Porsche Shop entered 911 of Ian Hewitt and Darryl Wilson, and the CTR Alpha Tune Seat of Chris Bentley and John Clonis, back on track after several years' layoff. Exiting Yentwood, the Tockwith Motorsports Ginetta suddenly slowed, electrical gremlins bringing the G50 to a halt out on circuit. It eventually fired up again, but the race 1 class winners were forced to make an extra pit stop for system checks. There was a less damaging delay for the Fox Motorsports Mercedes when Mark Murfitt had a brief spin at the chicane, but was quickly able to recover. Meanwhile, the GT3 version of the car was galloping its way back through the pack, Richard Neary regaining 3rd place with this move on Jade Kruger's Ginetta. Following an impressive opening stint in race 1, 2-time Fun Cup champion Graham Roberts hopped into the number 88 Team Hard Ginetta to replace Ben Wallace after the pair had finished 5th in class for the opener. As the endurance teams approached the halfway point in their 2-hour race, The Sprint Championship entries were nearing the end of their 50-minute race, and this move on David Mason put John Seal into second place within the category. His efforts later rewarded with the Sunoco Driver of the Day award. Despite picking up a second penalty, this time for a short pit stop, Richard Neary still had enough speed to recover and, against all the odds, take his second win in the sprint category. John Seal second, ahead of Mason and Wiley, with the Moss Motorsport BMWs both taking class victories.
Absolutely fantastic. It's my sort of first season in the championship, having had a year off, and to come away from it with a couple of class wins, can't really ask more than that, can you?
With the sprint category teams having left the circuit, it was the number 22 Ginetta, now driven by Andy Dimitrou, that picked up the overall lead and began to pull clear of teammate Chris Papageorgiou. With Mike McCullum's work for the day done, teammate Sean Cooper took control of the track-focused KTM, which was now up to third place, a lap behind the two Ginettas. Mark Murfitt, meanwhile, brought the Mercedes back in one piece, with not a scratch upon it. Well, almost. There were bigger worries, though, for Black Mamba Racing as Chris Papageorgiou's engine expired and brought out the safety car. For some, the full-course yellows would at least offer some respite from what was a physically and mentally demanding race.
It is hard out there. The track is fast in some sections and very slow in some sections, so it's sort of, I'm knackered.
I could tell. It's a big pack out there as well, hard to find some space.
It is, yeah, it is initially, and then I was quite lucky, actually. I found a nice little gap. Once the front lot sort of moved away and I sort of broke away from my group, then I was sort of on my own a little bit, so it was quite nice, actually. Quite relaxed for once.
On the restart, Andy Dimitrou was being shadowed by new second-place man Sean Cooper in the KTM. The track-focused team boss promptly unlapping himself and setting up a dramatic chase for victory. Third overall in the endurance category now was Tom Barley in the number 24 Ginetta, and running in a terrific fourth place was the BRM Motorsport Seat of Ashley Woodman, leading Class 4 ahead of the Stuart Line Seat, which had been forced to pit with steering and fuel pressure issues. In the final portion of the race, Sean Cooper put in some fantastic lap times in the Class 2 KTM to claw back almost an entire lap on the sole remaining Class 3 Black Mamba Ginetta. But a gutsy drive from Andy Dimitrou meant that he was just able to hang on, winning by 3.5 seconds after 2 hours of racing. Stuart Line's Seat crawling across the line to hang on to 5th place.
That was really hard work, but yeah, we managed to stay and keep enough pace, and it all came together in the end. But the team really were, like, if it wasn't for them, that was the hardest thing I've done for a while, really.
That victory gives Dimitrou and Williams the early points lead in the Dunlop Endurance Championship. Join us next time for round 2 from Silverstone.